also had illness in our house, Mark, and I desperately asked God to make my chest cold go away before this morning, and it did not happen. So I'm going to try not to hack into my microphone this morning. But if I do, please forgive me. My other disclaimer before I start is that I desperately tried to make Hannah's story about something that meant I didn't have to talk about infertility this morning. But the truth is that this story deals with a woman who desperately wants to have a baby and cannot. And it's a really complex topic that I think we rarely discuss, especially from the pulpit. It's a pain that's often hidden. It's not a very out in the open pain. And so before I start, I just want to be clear that I hope to speak about this with the utmost care that I can. And also, if it's ever too much for you this morning, I will not be offended if somebody gets up and walks out, because I want you to do what you need to do for yourself. Dallin, my spouse, and I met and dated and got engaged and married in a really short span of time. And so partly because of that, we were not in a hurry to add children to our own mix for quite some time. We knew we'd love to start a family someday, but we were really content to use those first years as a way to travel without kids and learn to know each other better, if I'm honest, start careers, et cetera, et cetera. So then fast forward to the moment that we decided, okay, now it's time, which, silly us, did you know that deciding it's time doesn't actually make it so? And I still clearly remember month after month wondering why we weren't getting pregnant. What did it mean for our future and our dreams for our family? And you're a year in, and you begin to wonder why you maybe waited so long to start trying. When we finally got the positive lines in the pregnancy test, my prayer changed from please God, let it be this month, to please God, don't let anything bad happen to this baby. Fast forward again through the births of our two oldest, and I shared this part of our story actually not super long ago in a sermon for a different reason, but I'll share it here as well. We had two kids, and I was feeling really uncertain on, are we finished with our family, are we not? Again, I still thought I could have a say in all this. But I was really uncertain. We even had some people say to us, like, why would you want more children? You have like an even number. It's perfect, it should be done, which I'll also just say is maybe sometimes when it's not necessarily helpful to say something, you just maybe don't say anything at all. It did not necessarily help my decision-making process. But at the time, I really thought that maybe they were right. And when I found myself unexpectedly pregnant in the fall of 2014, and yes, I get the irony of this, I cried. I remember very clearly calling my mom. I was crying. She says, what's wrong? I say, I'm pregnant. Again, what's wrong? But I was sad because I just didn't know if I wanted 3 kids. So then you can imagine my shame and my guilt when I started to miscarry that baby the day after Thanksgiving of 2014. I was sure it was either because of my uncertain feelings about how I felt about being pregnant, or the fact that I had run a 10K the day before, ran the turkey trot. Either way, I was certain it was my fault, it was something I had done, which, a word to the women in the room, it is never your fault. Just going to say that clearly. The following November, 2015, Judah was born, our youngest. And recounting this story recently to the kids prompted Judah to pipe up, and he said, but Mom, if you had that baby, then I wouldn't be here. And we are so glad he is. But his comment speaks to the absolute complexity and intricacies and really mystery around infertility and miscarriage and loss. Because it's just not simple. It's not straightforward, it's not one-dimensional. There are no two stories that are the same, like none. And not only are our stories different, but then there are the complexities in relationships. So what if it's hard for me to be happy for that other person who's pregnant? Or maybe I've struggled so long to get pregnant, and now I am? Am I allowed to be excited about that, knowing that my story can cause pain for someone else? I recognize that simply my story this morning of feeling sadness about my 3rd unexpected pregnancy could cause someone heartache, thinking, how could she feel sadness about a pregnancy when I so desperately want to be pregnant? And so I get that. I'm still worried that somehow my words this morning will come across as unhelpful or wrong or construed in a way that causes pain to someone this morning. Maybe I'll say too much this morning, or maybe I won't say enough. And perhaps all of this is why we have to handle our own stories with care, and we have to handle each other's stories with care. And I know there are a lot of people in this room who have lived your own version of this story. There are a lot of people in this room who are living their version of this story right now. And there are a lot that will experience it at some point. I read different stats this week, but it's widely accepted that between 1 in 6 or 1 in 8 couples will experience infertility at some point. Between 10 and 20% of known pregnancies end in miscarriage, but the number is likely to be higher if you take into account women who miscarry before they even realize they're pregnant, which happens also a lot. And it makes you wonder why, if it's such a common experience, that we don't talk about it more. But for those not experiencing it, it's hard to know what to say, just like my fear of harming someone this morning. And for women and partners struggling with it, it's incredibly personal. The effects of infertility or miscarriage or pregnancy loss is physical, emotional, social, spiritual, marital, affects decisions, relationships, calendars, bank accounts, bedrooms, and bodies. And that's more than enough reasons to keep it a hidden struggle and stay silent. And so many of these struggles are in silence. And I just want to take a real quick moment to shout out to Kelly Fry-Martin and Becca Smucker, who, with the help of Outreach Commission, are offering a grief group right now that's making space for this topic, holding up each other's stories, witnessing each other's stories and each other's pain and grief. And so I just thank them for the time and energy they're putting into making something invisible visible. Okay, but Hannah, you're like wondering if I'm going to get to our scripture today. I promise, I will. So you didn't hear the entire story of Hannah read today. We just heard snippets so that you knew what happened. So I'm going to give us a rundown and include some of the passage from 1 Samuel that was not read. Hannah's married to a man named Elkanah. She is one of 2 wives. So we have Elkanah married to Hannah, and then married to Peninnah. And up to this point, Hannah has been unable to have children. Peninnah, on the other hand, has lots of children. But despite this, to Elkanah's credit, he loves Hannah the most. He treats her the best. He gives her double portions of meat. So many things I could say about that. I'm just wondering, like steak for my next birthday. I don't know. They maybe didn't have flowers back then. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's likely that Hannah was the first wife, and because she couldn't conceive and have a child, that he married a second wife to solidify his lineage. Probably providing help on the land. He needed someone to inherit the land, whatever. So this solved the problem. The second marriage solved the problem for Elkanah, but it did not solve the problem for Hannah. In addition, there's some context that are important to understand just about the time period. So 3 things. Motherhood was assumed to be a crucial part of a woman's identity, and to have no children had a profoundly negative effect on women's social status and well-being at the time. It was assumed that the woman was the source of the infertility, always the woman's fault, which is what men and women feel even today. But again, to Elkanah's credit, he treats her the best, he really likes her, but in general, society would have said, well, something's wrong with Hannah. And then finally, it was assumed that God granted and withheld fertility. You hear the language in the scripture of like God opened the womb or closed the womb. This was an assumption. So you can imagine the grief that Hannah dealt with on a daily basis. We don't know all the whys behind why Hannah wanted a baby so bad, but those are enough right there. She desired to be a mother. She's distressed. She's grieving. And to make matters worse, her sister wife, it says, provoked her severely and irritated her. I don't know why people have to be so mean. And her husband, Elkanah, tries to console her. He says, am I not more to you than 10 sons? I thought about that this week. He might have been better off to say, you are more than 10 sons to me. I thought that was interesting. Or perhaps again, say nothing at all, which I alluded to earlier. But he tries to console her. A quick note about where this next part of the scripture takes place. They're in Shiloh. It's thought to maybe be about a day's journey from where they would have called home. They are likely visiting for their once-a-year fall pilgrimage festival, okay? This would have been the most practical time to leave your farm because harvest is over and you have time. So people would gather here once a year and they would give thanks for the past year for harvest, and they would seek God's blessing for the coming new year. And it's in this space that we're told Hannah presents herself to the Lord in the temple. But she does not come full of thanksgiving for the harvest. Instead, we are told she's deeply distressed, praying to God, weeping bitterly, and she makes this vow. She says, God, I'm in misery. Do not forget me. Remember me. Give me a boy, and I will give him back to you for your work. That's my paraphrase. She specifically promised to give him back as a Nazarite. For those who care about history, Nazarites were persons who entered into a holy agreement, either by their own vow or by the vow of a parent, which is the case of Hannah. There were three parts to identify you as a Nazarite. One was you'd abstain from wine and other toxic materials. Two, you wouldn't shave your hair for your whole term as a Nazarite. And three, no having contact with the dead body, even if it's like one of your closest family members. So, Hannah's willingness to dedicate a child, should God answer her prayer for one, was a sign of how strong she desired this thing. She wanted a child. And fulfilling that vow